Okay, good morning, everybody. I welcome everybody to this co-design session entitled Nuclear Technologies for a Healthier World? Question mark. I would like to thank everybody for your participation. And I personally hope that by the end of the session, we will have drawn interesting conclusions on the gaps, barriers, and opportunities indeed to work together in the continuous fight to defeat cancer in all its forms and the contribution that the nuclear technologies can give. Just a quick introduction for myself. I'm Elena Rigg-Stiel. I'm the head of the Euratom Research Unit in DG Research and Innovation, and I'm your moderator for this session. I would like to introduce and thank for their availability our speakers and panelists. Professor Christoph Höschen, Chair for Medical Technological Systems at the Otto von Guericke University in Magdeburg, Professor Elisabeth Cardis, Head of Radiation Program at the Institut de Salut Global de Barcelona, and Professor Hildegard van den Heuvel, Institute Director of Environmental Health and Safety of the Belgian Nuclear Research Center, SCK-CEN. I also would like to thank Mr. Patrick Child, our Deputy Director General for DG Research and Innovation, for giving the keynote speech. And last but not least, our three panelists, Irene Norsted, Acting Director for the Health Program in DG Research and Innovation, Mr. Said Abouzal, Head of the unit coordinating Euratom activities in the Joint Research Center, and Mr. Michael Hubel, Head of the unit in DG Energy D3. I would like to give you some rules for the game and some housekeeping, please, because we have a very tight session, and that's why I'm speaking fast as well, so I can give you all more time. To the speakers, please keep your intervention strictly to your allocated time. I will alert you when you have 1 minute left. To the virtual audience, 1 or 2 questions will be possible at the end of each intervention, and my colleague Domenico Rossetti will take these questions and publish them. So he will be the Q&A moderator. Please ask your questions during the talk through the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen, and keep your questions short and sharp. The most representative one will be chosen and read out to the speaker and published. I apologize in advance if not all the questions will be answered due to the limited time at our disposal. One last thing, please mute all the mics if you are not speaking. Okay, now I think without further ado, I would like to ask Mr. Patrick Child to introduce the session. The virtual floor is yours, Patrick, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Eleanor, and I'm very, very happy to be here and to welcome all of you, and especially our distinguished speakers to this session in the European Research and Innovation Days dedicated to the question of nuclear research. And I'm really happy that we've managed to include in the program this session, including with the slightly provocative title about the contribution that nuclear technologies can make for a healthier world, as Elena says, with a question mark. And so today I want to set the scene briefly about the European Union's general ambition in the fight against cancer, the role that Euratom has already been playing in this important area and more generally, and then a word about the future Euratom program, which is under discussion alongside our next Research and Innovation Framework program, Horizon Europe. So President von der Leyen has committed herself in the political guidelines for the present Commission to a European plan to fight cancer, to support our member states in improving cancer control and care, and for Europe to take the lead in the fight against cancer. Its overall objective is to improve the prevention, detection, treatment and management of cancer in the European Union, while reducing health inequalities between and within our member states. The development of the EU Cancer Plan will be closely linked to the mission on cancer in Horizon Europe, on which we saw yesterday the presentation to our Commissioner Maria Gabriel of the work of the Mission Board on cancer. And the cancer plan will maximize the impact of EU support to research and innovation, providing evidence-based knowledge to target specific actions for cancer prevention, early diagnosis, treatment and care, and also to the quality of life of patients and social integration. As we know, 40% of cancer patients in the European Union benefit from radiotherapies today. Over 110,000 hospitals worldwide use radioisotopes for the diagnosis or treatment of about 35 million patients each year, of which 9 million in Europe. Nuclear and radiation technologies have the potential to bring huge benefits for patients through improvements in medical devices, better imaging and treatment, and providing solutions to some of Europe's most pressing societal challenges, like the diagnosis and treatment of cancer, heart disease, and many other health conditions. And in this context, medical applications of ionizing radiation call for good integration of different policies, covering our public health policy, our research and innovation strategies, and also the work we're doing to develop radiation protection under Euratom and in other programs. And fostering synergies, therefore, between the Euratom research and training program and our broader health research agenda will help us to strengthen work on promising ionizing radiation-based cancer therapy. And that brings me to my second point, which is the work we are doing more specifically in this area under Euratom. As you will all know, Euratom has been our framework, which for more than 60 years has developed knowledge, competence in nuclear science and technology across the European Union. It includes basic and fundamental research, as well as technological innovative industrial developments, also linking Europe with the associated countries. Euratom also provides a framework for our international engagement, especially in the framework of the OECD's Nuclear Energy Agency and with the International Atomic Energy Agency. And so we have a situation today where we can be pleased to see that all European Union member states meet equally high standards of safety, radiation, protection, safeguards and security following the implementation of the relevant European legislation and directives. And the European Commission is also proud to be a supporter of the European Joint Programme CONCERT in the field of radiation protection. CONCERT and the involved platforms have developed a strategic research agenda for radiation protection research, including medical applications. And so in the last couple of minutes, I want just to mention the future Euratom program for Horizon Europe. This will continue to support the improvement of nuclear safety and the other issues I've mentioned, but it will also help us to deepen our work in the fight against cancer in the long term. The next Euratom program will include non-power applications, as well as in industry, agriculture, space research, development of stronger synergies with Horizon Europe, and a new common set of objectives. But I'm very happy that today we are able to concentrate particularly on the health dimension, and I hope that by the end of the session, and when we've heard all our distinguished speakers, we will be able to remove the question mark from our title, confident that together we are working to demonstrate that nuclear research can indeed provide to a more healthy and prosperous European Union. Thanks very much, Elena.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Almost perfect timing. Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to Professor Hirschen, who will introduce us to the applications of ionizing radiation in medicine. The floor is yours. You have 7 minutes. Please.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, dear Deputy Director General Patrick Child, dear Director Elena Stele, dear Renata Bacciocci-Nagy, dear André Jouve, dear friends and colleagues. For me, it's really a great honor to be invited for this speech, and listening to what Patrick Child just mentioned, I was wondering whether I should still talk. And if I would go on like this, naming all the people that I know and that are with us today, I think the 7 minutes would go much too fast, as I think the 120 years since Röntgen discovered the X-rays did. And regarding the integration, as it is my title, of ionizing, I will only focus on that, radiation in medicine, that was very fast as well. It didn't take 125 years. Actually, Röntgen imaged the hand of his wife just a few weeks after he had discovered the X-rays, and then the one of his assistant, Albert von Kölliker, which is very, very famous. And if you have not seen it, you can find it easily on the internet. But it's not only imaging, there are also the therapeutic approaches, and Patrick Child mentioned them already, and they also just started just a few years after the beginning of the 20th century. And at that time, it was mainly for treating cancer. I'm not saying curing at this point. Certainly, there had been a lot of progress since then. Also, I started to work in the field already in 1996. There had already been done a lot, and I was personally more than happy to see what kind of possibilities of this progress in the case of nuclear medical diagnostics are possible in 2005 at the example of clarifying the kidney function of my youngest son, who had been diagnosed to have a renal pelvis enlargement during the pregnancy. So such improvements are also related to European research in this field. And while Euratom started 60 years ago, I think the most important achievements in the field of medical applications of nuclear technology in Europe have been through the last 3 decades. There had been a number of successful European projects, to part of which I could partially contribute. They were dealing with ionizing radiation in medical applications, all, and most of which were focusing on radiation protection issues, and thus they were funded by the Euratom programs. At this point, I would just like to make a small side remark. We also had a certain time period where we as researchers heard, this is a health topic, so ask the health program from Euratom, and this is using ionizing radiation, ask the Euratom program from the health area. But nowadays, it is getting much, much better again. Actually, it got that much better that within the Opera project, we were able to build the first strategic research agenda for medical radiation protection research. Still, you listen or you hear the word protection at a very prominent part. Based on this, a new platform was found, which I had the honor to have been the founding president. This platform allowed us to provide substantial input in the forming of the European roadmap on radiation protection research within the European Joint Programming Project CONCERT, which Patrick already mentioned. But now we are all moving really forward even more. The Euratom framework of the EC provided a tender for a project defining a strategic research agenda in general for the application of ionizing radiation in medicine. We will work on this together with all the clinical associations, as well as with industry, and most important probably with patient representatives. And this, I think, is really, really exciting because it will pave the way for common approaches between the radiation protection community, the radiation production community, the health community, and the area of digitization. There are a number of fantastic new approaches that will be possible to elaborate on for the sake of the European societies. And I think this is most important. And I will only briefly mention them because the time is running quick and I won't highlight one over the other. So what we can looking for possibilities providing by the developments of nanoparticles in collaboration or in connection with ionizing radiation. This development in the nanoparticle area, as well as other developments, will allow personalized precision medicine, and it will be better possible than in any other medical field. To do so, we do not need only investigations about nanoparticles, but we need to investigate individual susceptibility and sensitivity as a radiation biology aspect. And we will be able to develop new or optimize existing molecular imaging approaches, something that has not been done completely yet and is currently basically limited to nuclear imaging techniques, and we will develop very many new approaches in this field. Some of the above-mentioned approaches and new radiopharmaceuticals will allow to even combine diagnostics and therapy and evaluate the therapy online, as often described as theranostics. We already see new therapeutic concepts on the horizon, and I think this is kind of a hint, really, that how important it is that health, digitalization, and Euratom work really together closely. These new therapeutic concepts might be proton or ion therapy, interventional therapies for e.g. or for example for cardiovascular disease, stroke, or cancer therapy. Or we can have microbeam grid therapy for cancer therapy. Radiation-based therapies can be extremely important for combined therapies, so where we link radiation therapy with, for example, immunotherapy or individualized chemotherapy. And here we need an optimization of both parts together. There are many possibilities for improved healthcare using ionizing radiation when applying artificial intelligence, such as radiomics or dose-saving imaging approaches. The last point on this very personal list is that we can, especially when using ionizing radiation in medicine, with its benefit and potential harm, and Elizabeth will certainly mention this more closely, work towards informed patient decision. If we want the future of the patients in Europe to be much better due to ionizing radiation, to new and optimized applications of ionizing radiation in medicine, it is a really key aspect to transfer the foreseen developments into practice, which has to be done in a harmonized way throughout Europe. This is an important but also demanding task due to the regulation and differences in the healthcare systems in various countries in Europe, and we still see that in various projects. But for a bright, shining radiation future, which I really see, I would like to invite you all, share your thoughts with us for the common roadmap as it will be developed by Euromed Rock and Roll, and let us work together on this and the fascinating related research aspect between Euratom, health and digitalization, for which I hope to have shown you the possibility on the one hand side, but also the necessity on the other side. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. Elena, you are
still... I'm unmuted, yes. I have to do a double click to unmute. Thanks very much, Christoph, for your intervention. Actually, it was very interesting. I think that we do not have any questions in our Q&A box, so I would like then to move to push on, and then if there are someone thinks of any questions, we can take them up all at the end. And therefore, I would like to give the floor now to Professor Cardis. Elizabeth Cardis will speak about the importance of low-dose research and radiation protection in medicine. Please, Professor Cardis, you also have 7 minutes. I will give you the 1 minute tag, 1 minute to the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak in this very important forum. As you know, ionizing radiation is ubiquitous in our environment, and we're exposed both from natural sources and from human-made sources. And currently, medical and natural sources are the greatest component of the dose received by the average person in Europe. As Christoph mentioned, the fact that radiation can cause cancer has been known for over 100 years, with cases of leukemia and solid cancers diagnosed among radiation pioneers, as well as in the early animal experiments at the beginning of the 20th century. And radiation protection measures were put in place relatively soon, with radiation protection guidelines existing at the multinational level since the 1940s. Now, today, the main concern in radiological protection is the adequate protection of the population from effects of low to moderate doses of ionizing radiation of the order of the doses that we receive in our general environment, at work, in medical settings, particularly, and in accidental settings. Now, there has been a lot of important research on the effects of low doses of ionizing radiation in Europe in the last decades, and much of it has been supported by the European Commission and the Euratom program through numerous framework programs. And this has led to a better understanding of the mechanisms by which radiation can cause cancer and to refined estimates of cancer risk. In 2008, the EC funded the work of a high-level and expert group, which reviewed the state of knowledge on radiation risks following low doses of radiation. It identified research gaps and priorities and developed the first European roadmap for radiation protection research for the mid to long term, up to 2030, actually. And following this, an association called MELODY was set up to constitute a European research platform in the field of low-dose radiation protection research. MELODY currently has 44 members, including national bodies that are responsible for defining, funding, and implementing research on health risk, as well as universities and research centers. An integral activity of MELODY is the establishment and the periodic revision of a long-term strategic research agenda for research. This is intended to guide priorities for national and for European research programs to fill research gaps and to test the hypothesis on which the current radiation protection system is based. The current MELODY strategic research agenda recognizes two major strategic areas of research. One is the effect of low doses and low dose rates on the risk of cancer. And in recent decades, epidemiology and biological studies have demonstrated that radiation can cause cancer even at relatively low doses. And we're talking of the order of maybe a few CT scans to the head, the orders of 100 milligray or less. We do have a number of uncertainties, however, and one of them is particularly important and alluded also by Christoph. It's the possible individual variation risk, the fact that some people may be at greater susceptibility of developing a cancer following a radiation exposure. This is something which is particularly of concern in medical and accidental situations, as well as in occupational settings. Another main area of uncertainty is the effect of the spatial distribution of risk, so basically the effects of different types of radiation, which is clearly important also in medicine, and the temporal variation in dose delivery with the fractionated doses that you can see in radiotherapy, for example. The other strategic area of research outlined in the MELODY SRA is the effect of low to moderate doses on risk of non-cancer diseases. And this is important, even though this session is about cancer, because non-cancer diseases are not generally taken into account in our radiological protection system. Actually, it's generally assumed that there exists a threshold well above the level of exposures we typically encounter in diagnostic radiation, in our environment, at work, below which there is no effect. But in the last decades, we have seen growing evidence from epidemiological studies of increased risk of circulatory diseases, cataracts, and cognitive neurodevelopmental effects. Results of the studies are not consistent, however, and in contrast to cancer, knowledge on the underlying biological mechanisms for such effects is sparse. But because the potential public health and radiological protection impact of these effects is large, if they exist, more research is needed to address this important research gap. Now, the quantification of disease risks in human at low doses and at moderate doses is difficult. It's a difficult challenge because the magnitude of risk due to radiation is expected to be low compared to the risk that we have due to other causes. And therefore, the potential for bias and confounding is high. Therefore, in order for epidemiological studies to be informative, to answer current questions in radiological protection, they need to be based on very large cohorts with relevant exposure scenarios, including and relevant dose levels, good dosimetry, high quality data on health, long follow-up, and the possibility of collecting information on important potential confounders. Mechanistic research is also much needed to complement the epidemiological data and actually to be integrated with the epidemiological data to better understand and estimate the possible magnitude of effects at low to moderate doses. Now, key epidemiological studies, including very important medical cohorts, exist in Europe. And through improvement of these studies, through pooling, for example, and improvement of dose estimates, and where needed through the conduct of new studies focusing on specific exposures of interest, including the novel modalities of radiotherapy that Christophe has mentioned, and where possible through the identification and integration of relevant biological endpoints and markers into molecular epidemiological investigations, I think we can gain further mechanistically informed insights into the magnitude of risk associated with low to moderate doses of radiation. And this is, I think, very, very important to provide the evidence basis we need for refining our radiological protection system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. We actually have one question which we have published in our Q&A, and I'll read it out. How about public acceptance of ionizing medicine in Europe? If high, why it is only Euratom who is supporting at this stage? Please. You have to unmute the mic, yeah.
Sorry, I think in general, the public acceptance of medical radiation is good in Europe. I think Euratom is particularly concerned because with the advent of higher dose diagnostic procedures like CT scan, we found ourselves in the radiation protection community about 10, 15 years ago in a situation where we realized that in diagnostic radiation, people with repeated CT scans could get doses, quite easily in fact, at doses that would result, doses in the range at which we have demonstrated that there is an increased risk of cancer. So basically, the objective of the research on medical radiation, and particularly in diagnostic radiation, is to ensure that we can estimate this risk properly and to optimize our diagnostic radiation uses so as to minimize doses and minimize risk. And one of the particular important issues is this issue of individual susceptibility, the fact that some people might have a greater risk of radiation-induced cancer, and it's important to identify these people and possibly offer them different types of diagnostic procedures. There's also the issue of therapeutic exposures. The new modalities may normally deliver the dose in a more focused way on the particular target, on the cancer. The effect in surrounding tissues may differ, and these are issues which may be important for the health of the patients, and it's therefore very, very important to follow this up, given the very large number of people who have survived a cancer and have survived radiotherapy. The long-term consequences of these exposures are very important.
Thank you very much. We have a second question for you. There has been a recent publication by Calabrese about errors on assumptions leading to linear non-threshold model, and that the threshold model is more accurate. Do you think this should be reflected in future policies and regulations for radiological protection, or shall we stay with linear non-threshold model? Very technical question.
Thank you. What we are trying to do in Europe, and this is what is being pushed by the MELODY Strategic Research Agenda, is to evaluate directly the magnitude of risk at low doses. So basically to try and do away with any assumptions about how we extrapolate from higher doses, which is why the focus in epidemiological studies and in mechanistic and biological studies is to evaluate what are the mechanisms in play at low doses and estimate directly the effects of low doses and low dose rates of radiation on cancer risk and risk of other diseases. So once we have further results, we will be able to evaluate whether or not these assumptions are correct and whether or not one needs to revise the protection standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very clear answer. Okay, there is nothing else. I think we had the time only for a couple of questions anyway. I would like now to give the floor to Professor van den Heuvel, who will speak about the importance of acquiring knowledge and competence in the use of radiation, ionizing radiation, exploiting sectoral and cross-sectoral knowledge. Professor van den Heuvel, you also have 7 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having invited me for this interesting sharing this morning. So in my presentation, I will concentrate mostly on the importance of education and training and also the associated infrastructure for sustaining all the research and all the developments within medical applications. As has already been highlighted by certainly by Christophe, there is there's a rapid evolving techniques and applications within medical applications using ionizing radiation, and therefore also research and also education and training should follow the same speed. So with these new devices, these new technologies, the new isotopes, for example, in radiation therapy, radiation therapy is using isotopes, also come other means of protection, also come good practice. And that means also with this constant evolution, we also need this lifelong learning, both at the academic level for students, but also for professionals via vocational training, for example, or continuous professional development. And it is addressed at the European level within the basic safety standards, where there is clear indication of the importance of radiation protection, education and training for healthcare, for example, for workers to protect themselves, for radiation protection professionals to protect the workers, the public and the environment, and also for healthcare professionals to protect the patients. And apart from the guidelines, there is also quite a number of projects dealing with these issues. And for the last two ones, there is quite some, let's say, good rules defined for the first one, for the workers, and to protect themselves. And also within these workers, there's also the researchers. The rules are maybe less clearly defined. And it's also important because we need the researchers of today and the practitioners of tomorrow. They need to know how to work with sealed sources, how to control their how to protect themselves, how to set patient doses and also assess the dose and control the dose to protectionists. For example, how to set up experiments with, for example, in animal facilities or animal husbandries, where using these new radioisotopes. What in case of a contamination of people and surfaces? So there is a lot there's quite a lot of requirements for that type of education and training also. Another challenge is also that these medical applications, it's really a multidisciplinary, let's say, environment in which we are working. So you need nuclear engineering, nuclear material sciences. When, for example, Christophe was talking about the nanoparticles, it's also material sciences or nuclear chemistry. We need medical physics, pharmacology, oncology, radiobiology, epidemiology, as also mentioned by Elisabeth. So there's also we have to have that challenge of keeping that the level and of skills and train the skills. So there's challenge in the knowledge that has been gained through all the research and should be translated in education and training. We have to train the skills. Sometimes at university, which are certainly knowledge centers, they do not always have the access to education and training and research infrastructure, for example, in the context of radiation protection. So for demonstrations, for thesis work, for practical training, and therefore also this association with hospitals or research, radiation protection research institutes is very important. And there's also within these platforms that radiation protection platforms that both speakers were already referring to, that's also assessed. And also the competence building. And mobility there is also an important factor there. with internships or scientific visits is also an important component of the training. And these mobility grants, they are often secured within projects, but when, for example, in concerts, we had an important amount of money which is invested in that, but when the project stops, it is also stopped. So I've talked about challenges, but there is also opportunities. Also, in the concert project, we have there has been a lot of attention given to the education and training, but also to infrastructure. So we have in Europe an important infrastructure database available. For example, we have irradiation facilities. We have in France, in Belgium, and in Norway. We have animal husbandry, so you can work with radioactive material. We have, for example, the podium project, which was one part within of concert, where we have these innovative techniques to assess doses, also to practitioners. So we have a lot available. We have a lot of opportunities there. So and so for the future needs, I think what we have to stress in this, if we want to keep this, the evolution and all the developments which we have in medical, which is also linked with research and innovation, but we have to have that link, that clear link, strong link between the practitioners, between the researchers, and also the training providers. That's really important. That chain we have to maintain. We also have to have the access to and the access and the sustainable support to these infrastructures. In hospitals or in radiation protection institutes or at universities, in order that we can, that the education and training, that we have the good infrastructure base for training our people. And for example, in the past we had this it's a different type of network, the Actinet network, for example, which was a project where this infrastructure for actinide research was made available, and that's also that. We could maybe think of a similar structure, and similar structure was also maybe in the UTEM project, which was dealing with education and training on medical physics for medical physics experts. There also we had that sharing. So that's really important. And maybe so if we want to keep that sustainability, maybe the MENAS platform, which is associating or unifying the 6 radiation protection platforms, is maybe a good hub for that sustainability. Also, we need to have the sustainable mobility funds. For students, we have Erasmus, but we also, that's sometimes generally starting from the student, less from the radiation protection community or the needs of the society. And also for professionals. We have Erasmus+, but that's very small grants. So to conclude, I think within CONCERT, which was a large project where all the different branches of radiation protection, including medical, were included. Education and training, but also infrastructure was key. And we hope also in the future for the Radiation Protection Co-Fund that we really go for it. There also education and training and infrastructure are key pillars to sustain the research, but also the application at the level of where there's interaction with the practitioners and the patients. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Oops, sorry. There you go. My chronometer was still complaining with me. Thank you very much. This was actually very interesting. It broadened a lot more even my horizon, that more than I knew. So I'm learning a lot today. We have we had a question for both Van der Heuven and Hirschen, so you can both answer. The question is, does increasing automation and use of CDS and AI systems in medicine call for changes in how we define responsibilities for protection of patients, e.g. transfer of responsibility from licensees, operators and medical practitioners to equipment, software systems of manufacturers and vendors? This includes education and training, which is increasingly technology specific. I see that Christoph is also answering in the chat and Q&A, but you can also answer orally. Remember that it's 4 minutes in total.
Christoph, can I give you the floor?
Yeah, okay, I will start. So I think in general, I had heard a very great talk yesterday by one really bright lady from the AI field. And she basically said something like, if we have a child, we don't blame the child for throwing a ball into the neighbor's window. So I don't think we can blame the AI system for doing something. So the final decision will still be with the operator. However, there will be changes because the workflow will change, and that certainly needs a lot of new training, and including especially a lot of training in terms of knowledge about the AI systems. Because if we use the AI systems as black boxes, then I think it's dangerous, and we should avoid that definitely. And Hildegard, maybe you can add on that.
Yeah, I can add on. For example, when I was thinking of the Podium project, there you will have with artificial intelligence or let's say extreme data management. The intention is to have a dose assessment without a dosimeter. But still, I mean, even if you have this progression and these innovation, you still remain responsible. You still have to know, okay, that you have to be sure that the dose is correct. So you should. There is always the practitioner, or who is or the people around him who are responsible also, as complementing from what Christoph was saying.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry. Again, we have a question that will be actually better for the panelists session. I will read it out, and then I will ask maybe Irene, Said, and Michael to reflect on it and see if you can address it in your discussion. It says, very interesting discussion, question to all from EC for the later part of the session. Synergies between Euratom and Horizon Europe don't need to stop on the health emission. Do you agree that there is many other areas that should be developed more for collaboration, low carbon energy, hydrogen production from nuclear, digitalization, advanced manufacturing, etc.? I will also try to put my 2 pennies worth in the discussion at the end, but I'll leave it. I think that this is for really the last part of the session. Right, I think that we can now thank Professor Van der Heuven again and the others. I think that we have actually finished now this part of the our session. We are on time with 11:10, so we are doing good time. I would like now to open a short wrap-up session that might include also answering the question of Mr. Patterson. And see the potential opportunities of synergies between medicine and nuclear, specifically for this session, in view of the Next Horizon Europe framework. So I would like again to introduce Ms. Irene Norsted, Acting Director for the Health Program in DG Research and Innovation, Mr. Said Abuzal, Head of the Unit Coordinating the Euratom activities at the Joint Research Center, Mr. Michael Hübel, Head of the Unit responsible for radiation protection and nuclear safety in DG Energy. So you all have 3 minutes, and I will start by asking Irene, please.
So thank you very much, Elena, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So as Elena has mentioned, I'm the acting director for the directorate where we are dealing with health and health research. And I wanted to provide a few sort of foods for thoughts and also a little overview of where we are going in Horizon Europe. First of all, I mean, it's needless to say that nuclear medicine is a pillar in modern healthcare. And the way I would like to see it here is a little bit that we can look at it in 3 parts. One is, of course, the technology development and the progress that is being made. We have the evolution towards the personalized medicine, where we really are integrating results from all types of diagnostics or screening tools. And that would be, you know, the biological, the genetic, but also a lot of information coming from imaging and radiology to better, you know, promote the personalization of healthcare, to make sure that every person gets the best possible diagnosis and adequate treatment as rapidly and as to high quality as possible. And then we have another aspect which hasn't been dealt with so much yet today, and that is the equal access to healthcare across Europe, which is another important point. And that is something that also has become very clear with the discussions around the cancer mission and the work on the European Action Plan for Beating Cancer. So in Horizon Europe, we have, of course, Cluster 1 Health, but of course we have other parts as well that also can contribute to progress in this area. And I would also like to mention the European Innovation Council, because that we know that a lot of disruptive technologies and breakthroughs are really bottom up. So I would like to also just quickly mention that, because I think it can be quite important for the technology development in particular. In the area of the collaborative research part, of course, we will continue to support the technology development and, of course, the better understanding of the diseases, where, of course, we are using also a lot of these tools for progressing in our biological knowledge and also finding better ways of diagnosing and treating and screening. I would also like to mention the partnerships. So you may be aware we have a public-private partnership with the pharmaceutical industry right now, but we will propose a new partnership for the integration of technologies sectors. So here we're working with all the industry sectors in the health area, which also would include the imaging, the medical technologies, biotech, pharma, and digital. So this will, of course, also help, because we see a future where it's already happening, where you start to integrate these different tools, where you have screening, you would have a treatment, you would read the data, you would have, etc., the follow-up. So this is really where we would like to go. You have already heard a lot about the cancer mission, but I haven't heard the word COVID yet today, so I think I need to put that just before I finish, because I think here we have so much to learn, and where also nuclear medicine can help us understanding, you know, the effect of the COVID infections that are affecting the brain and many other organs. So I will stop here. Over to you, Elena.
Thank you very much, Irene. We now I will give the floor to Said.
Thank you, Elena, and good morning, colleagues. In the GRC, we also believe and we are convinced on the importance of radiation, nuclear science application on the economic and the well-being of the society. Traditionally, in the GRC, our nuclear program was mainly focused on fuel cycle, safety and security of the fuel cycle. But since 3 decades now, we managed to open the program to nuclear science application. We are working on many aspects of nuclear science application. You know, it's not only the health. There are issues related to security, detection of explosive drugs at borders, the link between nuclear energy and non-nuclear energy. There is issue of the introduction of renewable in the grid, how the grid behave. New technology are coming in nuclear energy, SMR, and so on. In agriculture, we have projects on food authentication using radioisotopes. We have contracts with the European Space Agency to see how we can use some batteries based on nuclear radioisotopes in space, and so on. In the health program, since 2 decades now, we are deeply involved with one important project by developing alpha emitters to be used for therapy, and this work is very important, and we were awarded in 2017 on that. I'm not here to self-congratulate the GRC, but I would like to say that we have unique nuclear facilities, and we have scientists in the GRC that can be mobilized and can help in any new developments. The chance we have also in the GRC is that we have also an important non-nuclear program, and the synergy between nuclear and non-nuclear can be experimented inside the GRC. We were speaking this morning about nanotechnology, about intelligence, artificial intelligence. All those things can be also experimented if needed in the GRC. Our nuclear facilities are open of access. They can be used by all the European scientists. Training, it's also important issue for the GRC. We are ready to play, again, role to support training for practitioners, for professionals if needed. We are also ready to work with the community in developing any best practice or guidance that we may need in the future. For your information, we are also carrying studies on behalf of the Council on the issue of the radioisotope in the European market, how they are reimbursed, and so on. So we are also ready to do any kind of similar study if needed. So we work together with Elena, with all the colleagues in NR and Santé, because we believe that the future is in the synergies between the programs if we want really to maximize and to be more effective in the future. Elena is asking me to stop. So this is more or less what I want to say, that the GRC has its scientists, its unique nuclear facilities. They are European facilities, they are Euratom facilities, and we are ready to contribute. Okay, Elena.
Thank you very much, Said. This was very comprehensive. Last but not least, I would like to ask Michael to intervene. Thank you. 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity to be part of this very, very interesting session. And I risk, of course, repeating things which were said before, but I think it's very important that also from the policy perspective in radiation protection, which we represent a little bit here, we do repeat what has been said. I think what is very clear from the discussion is that the challenges and opportunities in the medical field, but also in terms of other non-power applications. I mean, I don't see any question mark. I think it's very, very clear in terms of the title of the session that there are many opportunities and areas where nuclear and radiation technologies play an important role and an increasingly important role in medicine, in the diagnosis and treatment. I think these are things we can only address in a proper way if we integrate, as Patrick Child said, policy frameworks and policy approaches, and if we look at these opportunities, but also these challenges in a forward-looking way by bringing policy approaches together. So in a similar way as the Commission overall addresses cancer now in this integrative way, which will be coming together in the Europe Beating Cancer Plan, from our sector, many of you are aware of the work under the acronym of SAMIRA of developing an integrated approach again for non-power applications. We started broad and we also focused in on medicine as a first area of activity. And we see this emerging SAMIRA action plan as the sector's contribution to the Beating Cancer initiative. And I say the sectors because this is work led by DG Energy, but it is work taking forward and developed in very, very close cooperation with our colleagues in health policy, with our colleagues in research, in RTD and the JRC. And it helps to really, in this area, build bridges, I think, between the different approaches and perhaps even within RTD in this sort of bridge which we heard about between Horizon Europe and the Euratom research program. So what we would like to focus on is 3 axes of priority. We want to work on the supply of radioisotopes. We want to very centrally work on the quality and safety of diagnosis and treatment, so patient care, where I think a lot of this discussion we've had today comes together. And thirdly, we want to have a pillar on innovation to really sort of make sure that we are ready for the developments of the future. And of course, these three pillars are then challenges in themselves, but I think in this integrative way, we will be doing something very helpful and important for the sector. And just very quickly to address the question, of course, it's not only medicine, but we can start, I think, with medicine as a very important area. That's what member states told us in the council last year. Focus on medicine for the moment, but don't forget other areas, and we will have to see how we can address challenges in other fields around the non-power applications as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michael. Your presentation, your 3 minutes wrapped up, complemented very nicely everybody else's interventions. On my side, before we close, because we have 5 minutes, so I thank very much everybody for being on time, also the participants for short and sharp questions. I would like to say on our side that yes, together with the health program, both in DG Research and Innovation, and through them with Sante, with DG Energy, with the JRC, we have clearly started with the health applications for non-power applications, but we are committed to finding synergies wherever possible, wherever logical and feasible in other areas. And to this end, in the Commission strategic programming, it is explicitly mentioned that synergies will be possible between Horizon Europe and the Euratom Research and Training Program. So clearly, we have started with health applications because they are more urgent and also mature, but we will also look in the future throughout in the next few years if there are any other areas where synergies can be achieved. Okay, I see that Irene has replied to the question about any link between the Euratom Research and Training Program and the mission on cancer. So thanks, Irene, for answering in writing to this question. And I think that we can now close this really interesting session. I would like to thank everybody again for keeping to time. I'm the one who's getting out of time now. I'm convinced that there are, the synergies between Euratom and the other programs will be for the benefit of society, the citizens, the patients, and also social acceptance. Medical applications of ionizing radiation call for good integration, of different policies on public health, on research and radiation protection, but also on cross-sectorial educations and mobility and the use of research infrastructures, as we have heard. So the medical field is a prime example of where we need to work together, and we will do our best to strengthen this further in both the Euratom Research and Innovation program and in Horizon Europe. Sorry. Yeah, okay. And to this, so especially for education, I cannot forget the role that NN is playing in this respect. we have 2 minutes left, and then we'll be kicked out of the question whether we want it or not. So I would like to end by again thanking all the speakers, but also thanking the organizers of this session. So I would like to thank our colleagues Renata, Andre, and Domenico, because they have put a lot of work to make this session possible, and for their hard work. So thanks again, everybody, and I apologize if we have not answered all the questions, but I think 95% of the questions were published and answered. So thank you once again. And if you have any further questions, do not hesitate to get in touch with us directly. Thanks very much, everybody. I think we have finished. No, we have 1 minute yet. Okay, but anyway, thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll meet again either in person or virtually. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Close.